Welcome to the Paul Has Fun podcast. I'm Paul, and on this podcast, I dig into my hobbies. I also document my life and interests. Thank you so much for spending time with me.
These are some of my favorite quotes from Ed Mylett's book, The Power of One More. I discovered Ed Mylett through listening to Sean Croxton's Quote of the Day podcast. But the thing about Ed Mylett, he sounds very authoritative, but he also keeps it very simple. Some of the biggest lessons that I've learned from Ed Mylett, when you do what you're going to say you're going to do, it builds confidence. And that confidence tends to snowball into more and more confidence. And another great lesson that I've learned from Ed Mylett, these are both from listening to his podcast, was to do the things that you say you're going to go ahead and do. It's great to go ahead and schedule everything. Schedule kind of your life, schedule the activities you got to get done, like a to-do list. And I've heard some other self-help people say that it's not always great to to-do list because it keeps you kind of locked into this thing without like space to maybe get creative or just do other things or not be beholden to this to-do list. But I find that I like a to-do list, and it keeps me on track doing the things that I want to do. I don't get everything done, but I get a lot of things done on a to-do list. And once again, following through on what I do, what I say I'm going to do, builds more confidence in myself. And I find that really works. That piece of advice has worked for me. Now, my thoughts on the book as a whole, I thought the book was good. I didn't think the book was like outstanding. To me, Robin Sharma's books are the ones that I really hold in high esteem, especially, like I've said many times in this podcast in the past, the 5 a.m. Club. Robin Sharma's book is incredible. If you like self-help books, that's one of my absolute favorites. Another one being probably right below that is The Go-Giver. But this book was very good, and Ed Mylett, he goes into different stories about his life and the lessons that he's extracted. And like I said, I'm going to talk about some of my favorite quotes from this book. So let's go ahead and get into that. I read this on the Kindle, so the pages that I say out loud here may not be the same as if you're reading this book in a hardcover or softcover format. Now, the first one is on location, so it says kind of location on the Kindle, 591, and it says, self-confident people share one habit in common, and that is the ability to keep the promises they make to themselves. That's the whole thing I was talking about in the beginning. This next quote is location 606, and it says, let this sink in. You are the only one who gets to say in how much self-confidence you want. When you break internal agreements, you're only fighting with yourself. If this sounds a bit crazy, that's because it is. Wouldn't you rather save your energy for the other battles you're fighting? That's another favorite quote in this book here. This is in location 655 of, once again, the Kindle version of Ed Mylett's book, The Power of One More. True beauty comes from within. Your beauty comes from your soul, intentions, your capacity to give, how you treat people, your beliefs, and your kind heart. It's not bad to work on your health, lose weight, dress in nice clothes, and pay attention to your grooming. The trick is to do it for you and nobody else. Remember that you are defined by the content of your character and not by the reflection in your bathroom mirror. This next one is a short one. This is on location 1292. It says, when performance is measured, performance improves. Close proximity to measurement is critical. Now, I can go off on a whole tangent about this because some time back, I started to use calendars, monitor my behaviors. I got that inspiration came from listening to the Porn Reboot podcast. I've mentioned many times in this podcast in the past that I have a bit of a sex addiction. The teachings of the Porn Reboot podcast and the Porn Reboot system, which I'm not a member of, but I really like a lot of the things that they talk about. It talks about monitoring your behaviors, like seeing what days of the week that you kind of act out. And I just took that to a little bit of an extreme where I started to do that for sleep. I started to do that for my diet. I'm a bellman job in my hotel job, and I do that to measure my tips. And then you start to see patterns, like in terms of what I'm starting to think of, like Russell Crowe, Beautiful Mind, and he starts to see these figures like kind of in the air. But you start to see patterns as to when the money-making days are happening, or like what time do you normally go to sleep? How much sleep do you get? And you can make changes to this thing. The most recent one is trying to develop new habits. So going 66 days of doing a particular activity to develop that new habit. And that was the most recent calendar that I've used to go ahead and make notes on. So I like that quote a lot. That's on location 1292. It says, once again, performance is measured, performance improves. Close proximity to measurements is critical. I love that. All right, let's go to the next quote here. This one's a little bit of a longer one. This is in location 1337 of the book. It says, when people see you're no longer wasting time, they begin to not waste your time. They see you also no longer spending too much time taking care of other people's priorities because you are too focused on taking care of your own. And the following quote to that, right after that, is, at work, you need to be reasonable about this. Find a way to make your employees' goals your goals and blend the two to create harmony. Now, this is one that I'm working on because I think I'm a good listener. I feel. So sometimes, coworkers and other people, they just want to spend their time telling me about their lives. And I think you could glean wonderful, beautiful knowledge. And you're giving your coworkers time, to kind of vent or like just to talk about themselves. And you get to learn about them, and I think that that's fun. But there are times when I want to work on my little projects, which I actually should not be doing at work. But there are times when I have some free time at work, some downtime, and I like to work on my own little things. Just want to kind of keep talking because they already have that confidence built with me. So it's tough sometimes to tell them, hey, I got to work on my own thing or I don't have time to talk. Trying to be better about that for sure. Moving on to the next quote here. This next one is on location 1609. This is a short one. It says, proximity to people causes familiarity, and our brains move toward this familiarity. So our brain basically likes familiar things, but that's one of my biggest challenges in life and I heard this like while watching TikTok, like listening to some motivational speaker, and I really enjoyed that. Our brain says a lot of garbage. It really does. And it's kind of weeding out like the good things, but our brain is always going to go to pleasure. Our brain is always going to be so critical of us. And in terms of like our thoughts is what I mean more so. Get rid of that stuff. Like find a way or a term or a particular word that you can use to empty the brain out from having this loop of this conversation going on. Like I said, of just like, hey, let's do the most pleasurable thing, which can lead to trouble. Like I said, foods, sex, going to the same places all the time, not a lot of change. And this quote reminds me of that, of familiarity. How familiarity can be a good thing, especially I think routines and good habits can be very good because it can make you consistent. Familiarity can also cause boredom. The spice of life is variety, right? So familiarity can be a blessing, and it can also be a curse. So that's what that quote kind of reminded me of. Getting to the tail end of these quotes here. This next one is on location 1784. It says, dreams are the product of your imagination at work. Imagining is therapy. It's healthy. So one of the best ways to be good to yourself is to put your imagination to work. Love that. Love that so much. For me, imagination is creativity, and I love creativity. And even if it's not you're creating the original thing, but if you're copying someone else but kind of putting your own spin on it, or just copying someone else just to learn the skill, that's cool too. And I think that involves some imagination, that involves some creativity, just to even wrap your brain around that. And giving yourself permission to dream. That was the name of this chapter. The next quote is in this chapter. It's in location 1810. It says, Dr. Wayne Dwyer, a very famous motivational speaker, was fond of saying, forgiving others is essential for spiritual growth. That spiritual growth releases you from a lot of useless anger and pain. Spiritual growth is directly linked to dreaming and your imagination. Love that so much. Next quote here. This is in location 1891. It says, what if you could find one more powerful question to ask yourself several times a day? It's impossible for me to guess what questions and answers are important to you. Instead, I've put together the following list to start your self-examination process. Certain questions will resonate with you. Pay attention. That's what your inner you is trying to tell you something important. Oh man, I super love that. Good questions and drilling down to the why of the matter. It's super helpful. It just kind of gets to the whole meat of the situation, right? I've highlighted a lot of quotes in the book, but not just to belabor this forever. I'm going to read you one more here. This is in the chapter called 9 Ways to Have a Higher Standard. This one particular quote, this is on location 2316. It says, "Perfection is also boring. It's our flaws that make us interesting, human, and relatable. Everybody has flaws, and those who think they don't have any are the ones who have the biggest flaws of all." I love that so much because I know myself personally, and many of us are always chasing the things that we see in social media, like that's so good, it's so perfect. Like, if I was that, then all my problems would kind of go away, kind of thing, or so many of my problems would go away. It's our warts, it's our the way that we are, the way that we look, the way that we sound is our special ability. That's something that's I've struggled with, and over the years have come more and more to accept. I was speaking about this to a friend about dancing. I love dancehall dancing. With dancehall dancing, there's oftentimes dancers in Jamaica or around the world, but it's 9 times out of 10 dancers in Jamaica that are creating these fantastic moves. And when we go to parties, when I go to party with my friends, we are doing these moves that we see these dancers doing on social media or in videos. I have gotten caught up in like, I have to look exactly like these dancers do, because first of all, you're paying respect to the dancers that are creating these moves because you're doing it the way that they presented it. But on the flip side too, like, my body is never going to move 100% like these dancers do. Sometimes that's the thing that makes it so special and unique, that they move the way that they do. But that goes back to this quote, that the way that they move and the way that their body moves makes this one particular original move or combination of moves look so spectacular. So when I do it, it's just an imitation of the move. In that same sense, in that same playful creativity, why can't I put up my own spin on these moves, That's okay. It's not wrong. It's good to pay respect, and I think you should be respectful. Pay the respects to the creator of these original dance moves, but also put your own spin on it. Make it your own in a way. That making it your own comes from the way that your body moves, and that being okay. It's taken me a long time to because I could sometimes be a snob with these kinds of things. Like, no, that's the way it's not done. It should be done this way because that's the way the person did it. Playfully creating and playfully playing around with it is how that move a lot of times was originated. I hope I'm not putting you in the weeds with talking about this. But what I'm saying is that the way that you are is great. The way that you are right now, in terms of the way you move, the way your body is, because it's so like a unique signature to you, and that's wonderful. That's beautiful. That's the reflection that I have with listening to this quote. But those are some of my favorite quotes from Ed Mylett's book, The Power of One More. Have you read this book, and what are your thoughts? Please post it down below wherever you may be listening or watching this. Website to do so is on paulhasfun.com. You could comment there as well. My name is Paul. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope to catch you on the next one.